Welcome to Juan's World, and as I already wished you a Happy New Year in my last video, I'll just simply say welcome to the rest of 2023. It's not turning out too bad so far. I've got nothing much to report at the moment, but I will be getting back into the swing of a little bit of teaching and whatnot. After today, well, what's today? Today is Plough Monday, and it's a really wonderful festival in England, even though it probably wasn't celebrated terribly widely outside of East Anglia and for probably not terribly long, but it's stuck, and so here we are. Plough Monday is the first Monday after Epiphany. Epiphany is the end of Christmas. So as the theory goes, you have your Christmas celebration, the 12 days of Christmas, they end at Epiphany, and then Monday you go back to work. And in East Anglia that meant for the ploughman going back to ploughing, to start the ploughing season, to follow the seasonal round. You know, the ground has been frozen for the winter and is now starting to thaw so that they can start ploughing, and then they'll start sowing and all of that kind of stuff. You know, all right. So Plough Monday is supposed to be the day when the ploughmen go back to work. So what do? They say, okay, let's have a holiday. So they have Plough Monday holiday, and what they did in some parts of East Anglia, in Cambridgeshire for example, they would put ribbons on a plough and they would carry it or drag it around the town and beg for money, for beer or whatever, so that they could have another celebration, and then Tuesday they would actually really get back to work. And it's also said that they were kind of hooligans. You know, that they would go to all the rich people's houses. Of course, they didn't go to poor people and ask for money. They were the poor people. So they'd go to the rich people, they'd go to the people who owned the farms and so forth, knock on the door and ask for some, you know, not necessarily ask for money, maybe ask for bread and cheese, which we'll talk about in a minute, or beer, or, you know, some largesse, you know, to show that that you're a good person. But if nothing was forthcoming, there is at least one record of them yoking themselves up to the plough. They didn't have an ox or anything animal to pull the plough with. So they yoked themselves up to the plough and ploughed up the lawn of the person who wasn't going to pay them or give them any food or drink. I'm sure that's not very common, but there is a record that the townspeople said that they couldn't be prosecuted for doing this because it was an old charter. That means that it had existed since the beginning of common law, which is also probably not true, and who knows what happened, and who knows how much of this was very common. But I like to celebrate Plough Monday as the sort of end of Christmas, beginning of the season that's going to get down into Lent eventually, and so I will have some videos about Lent and Easter coming up. And also coming up in this month on the 22nd is Chinese New Year. So I think I'll celebrate that, and I'll do a video for that too. I'm not going to do Tuesdays and Fridays anymore, but I will do the odd celebration as it comes up, or something that is on my mind. And today what's on my mind is Plough Monday. So we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at the ploughman's lunch, which I've done before, but I want to do it again a little bit differently, and also Norfolk plough pudding. Now I make both on Plough Monday, And I've done Norfolk plough pudding recipe before in my videos a long time ago, many years ago. And I'll put a link down below in the description so that you can see how I used to do it. I think the original was more like how you make steamed pudding, which includes steak and kidney pudding and I don't know what else. You could you could make a chicken and leek pudding or a chicken and mushroom pudding. You know, there's all kinds of things you could do. But I want to just look at Norfolk plough pudding again, because I'm troubled by the fact that I have to use butter in my in my crust, because you're supposed to use suet, but I can't get suet in Cambodia. But I had a sort of small brainstorm. I thought, well, I can get fat pork, belly pork, so why don't I use that fat instead of suet and see what happens, because it's got a porky flavor to it, which is going to be closer to suet than butter. So we'll see. So that's coming up. And I'm also going to look at the classic ploughman's pudding, ploughman's lunch, but I'm going to bring some changes on it. So let's get started. So I've habitually done a couple of things on Plough Monday. It's a way of sort of wrapping up Christmas and looking forward to Pancake Day, but just saying like, okay, today's a good day for what? Well, for ploughman things. So in England there's such a thing as a ploughman's lunch. And this goes back to the 19th century when agricultural laborers, aka ploughmen, used to take for their lunch a big hunk of bread and a big hunk of cheese. Usually the two being about the same size. And this became known as a ploughman's lunch, and became very common in the 50s and 60s in pubs in England, where they rarely served food, and they rarely served cooked food, but lunches they would sometimes offer a light thing like maybe sandwiches or a ploughman's lunch. That is just a piece of fairly indifferent cheese, usually some generic thing called cheddar, whatever happened to be called cheddar in Sainsbury's that day, and a piece of bread and some butter and maybe a pickled onion, maybe a pickled egg, usually a little bit extra for the pickled egg, and you know, tides you over until you have a proper dinner in the evening. And it meant that pubs didn't have to go out of their way to have kitchens and cooks and staff serving and washing up and all of that kind of thing. It was just very simple. Although there was a pub in Oxford called the Royal Oak. Well, I'm sure the Royal Oak's still there, but whether they're still serving ploughmans, I don't know. They used to have a big chalkboard, and on the chalkboard it would say what cheeses they had that day, and they would normally have 20, 25 different cheeses, all the way from Roquefort and Stilton to Double Gloucester, Wensleydale, all the old-fashioned cheeses of England and France, and some crusty bread and butter and a pickled onion. You know, I mean, very, very fancy for those days to be able to get you know, camembert for your ploughman's lunch. But anyway, here's what I made for today for my ploughman's lunch. much more sophisticated than you would ever find in a pub in England because of the multiple cheeses here. I've got a Danish blue. I can't get any really good blue cheeses like Roquefort or Stilton, but the Danish blue will have to do. I've got a little bit of brie here. It's just warming up. A Swedish cheese of some sort. I don't know whether it's Jarlsberg. I don't think so. And a pretty nice cheddar that I found in one of the markets, and I'm just taking my time to eat. And then I also made my own pickles, and I made a pickled shallot, and I'm making some more of them right now because they're really nice. And I'm also making some pickled onions using rice wine vinegar rather than malt vinegar, which was what the English would normally use. So it's a little bit fusion-y, okay. But I've also made not a pickled egg, but a marinated egg. It's a boiled egg that you let sit in a mixture of rice wine and soy sauce, and it turns the outer coating a nice dark color. And I've done the same or similar with some Chinese mushrooms. So all told, I've got my cheeses, I've got some pickles. I couldn't find crusty bread today. I don't know why. Sometimes Mondays they don't have it at the bakery. So I had to make do with some fresh rolls. But I've also got some cream crackers because that's pretty standard for after dinner. You know, when you've finished your dessert and you're just drinking some port and having some cheese, you might have the cheese on cream crackers rather than on bread. So that's my cheese display. And some years I used to make a Norfolk plough pudding, and this one here is the one that I made in Buenos Aires, and it's probably the best one I've ever made. And I make them off and on. It just depends on whether the mood strikes me. And today I thought, oh well, okay, why not? So it's very simple. The filling, it's a suet pudding, just like steak and kidney pudding, or even plum duff or spotted dick, except that like the sweet ones, spotted dick and plum duff, don't have fillings. They're just the suet pastry that's been boiled, and then fruit added. Whereas the steak and kidney pudding, the plough pudding, are meat on the inside and a suet pastry on the outside. Now I can't get suet in Cambodia. I don't even know where I would begin to think about it. I mean, I might be able to get it imported possibly, although being fat, I think sending it in the mail from even an online store might be problematic. So in the past I used butter instead, which is okay. But I thought that what I would do today is I would use belly pork fat, because it would have the savor of pork, obviously. And so let's see. So I got a big chunk of pork fat and put it in my food processor and wound it up so that it's nice and like crumbly, like crumbs. And then added some flour, some baking powder, because it's typically more of a raised pastry. And then did my thing with my food processor. My food processor was my Christmas gift to myself last year, and I haven't used it a lot, but I do now and again. I used it a lot to make guacamole last year, and it's excellent for making pastry. You know, so you tumble up the fat and the flour together until they're all very, very well mixed, and then you turn the processor on, and you dribble in cold water until it comes together in a ball, and then you take the ball out and you roll it out and you line a pudding dish with the pastry, and then add your filling and then put a pastry top on it, cover it all up, and put it in the steamer for 4 hours. And I've got my induction plate turned off for the moment because I'm making this recording because it's very loud, but I usually use the induction plate so that I don't use up all my propane in one go. So 4 hours, and then I'll return. It's been on for 2 hours now. I'll return when it's finished, turned out, and I'll show you it. And I'll also show you the gravy I made, which I thought was a little bit ingenious. I had some onion left over, and when I chop up an onion, I usually cut the tops and tails off and then cut it in half and then take the outer skin off with the outer layer of onion. I thought, well, why don't I just put that in with a little pork gravy and see if I can make an onion gravy for the pudding. Now normally the pudding is not served hot, it's normally served cold. But I thought, well, maybe I'll give it a go hot with gravy, and then for the next few days I'll eat it cold. So I'll come back when the plough pudding is ready to serve. So here we are 2 hours later. The pudding is out and ready to show you. Now, one of the things about steaming for 4 hours, which is a bit of a long time. I mean, the meats inside don't really take 4 hours to cook, any more than when I steam my Christmas pudding for 8 hours. It doesn't, strictly speaking, need those 8 hours, but it does get darker over time the longer that you cook it. And that's true with the suet pudding, that it gets a nice sort of tan browning on the outside if you cook it for 4 hours. So here it is, just opened up the top, and you can see it's beautiful brown. And now what I'm going to do is just invert it into a plate, and you can see that it's nice and brown all over. And now I'm going to add the onion gravy and just make it look like a castle with a gravy moat surrounding it, I guess, something like that. Now I'm going to cut a slice out and show you the inside and serve it up on a plate. All looks just wonderful. It's I wouldn't say better than my Buenos Aires pudding, the first one I made, but it's about the same or close. I think I still think my Buenos Aires pudding was the best, but this is pretty close. And the pastry with the pork fat is really very close to suet. It's got a nice savor to it, and it is a little bit crispy on the outside. Just really delectable. The sausage and bacon and sage and onion interior is quite aromatic, and the onion gravy adds a certain savor to it. So all in all, a very good Plough Monday. Now, of course, 4 cheeses and cream crackers and bread and pickled onions and marinated eggs and plough pudding. I'm just stuffed to the gills, even though I haven't eaten all that much, but I just don't eat that much anyway. So I'm going to be eating plough pudding for the next week, I guess. And so I hope you have a good week. I will see you back here for Chinese New Year. I may do 2 videos, it depends, because Chinese New Year extends over a long period of time. Some people, traditionalists, extend it over 15 days, but most of them at least over 7 days, and it's a major holiday in China, and not a holiday here in Cambodia as such, but we have a very large Chinese population, and so there's a lot of festivities going on all the time. Sometimes fireworks, and of course they're burning the old kitchen god, and all of those things which we'll get to. So meanwhile, Have a wonderful week, and I will see you back here at the end of January. And please tell your friends, please like, please subscribe, tell your friends to take a look at what I'm doing, have them like and subscribe, and I will see you at the end of the month.